Hey, what's going on everybody? Too long to interview Filmmaker here, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. So you might be wondering what I'm doing in my car. Well, that's because we're taking a look at the brand new Viltrox 13mm f1.4 for the Sony E-mount system. And I want to thank Viltrox for sending this out to me because this is a really interesting lens. It says it's for APS-C, but you can actually get even wider on full frame. That's just kind of the little teaser here. But otherwise, it's basically a vlogging lens, so let's go vlogging. Now, what's interesting about the campaign of this specific lens is that they're actually going through Indiegogo first, and at the time of this video, if you get it the super early bird special, it's about 360 bucks. Otherwise, the full retail price is going to be $429 when it is available in places like Amazon, B&H, so on and so forth. Now, the cool thing about this specific lens is the fact that if you're on an APS-C sensor, it's basically a full frame equivalent of about a 20mm, which is pretty wide, and at an f1.4 to boot. But the really cool thing about this lens is what I said in the beginning, is that if you are on a Sony camera full frame and you use the clear image zoom, you can actually go to about 1.2, just on the verge of 1.3. And that's going to give you approximately a 15.5 to 16mm f1.4 on full frame, which is very, very wide. So if you're on full frame camera, you can have the best of both worlds. Now, for people that are curious what it looks like between the APS-C mode on a full frame camera versus the 1.2 to 1.3 crop mode, this is in the Super 35 crop mode currently. And here is if you use the 1.2 to almost 1.3 to get the full frame 15.5 to 16mm look. When it comes to the flares of this lens, basically, if you have the light going straight down the barrel, you're definitely going to get a whole lot of flares as well as loss of contrast. Basically, it's going to be hard to use with a light going straight down the barrel. But if the light is not going straight at the barrel but coming down from an angle, the flares are actually quite well controlled, so that's definitely good. Now, all the Viltroxes have this little characteristic that if the light is coming at a very extreme angle towards the lens, that you're going to get this kind of starburst at the very last second. And hey, at least all the Viltrox lenses have this characteristic, so we are unified in this point. Now, for people, they might not like this flare, but I actually used all the Viltrox lenses for this dance music video where the flares did show up a couple times. And I felt like the flares actually added to the energy of the music video. So for those kind of things, it actually works out quite good. But if you don't like the flares because it doesn't work for you, then Viltrox lenses all have this, and it's something you should be aware of. When it comes to vignetting, I really don't see anything going on here. There might be like ever so slightly at wide open, but otherwise the vignette is well controlled for this lens. Now, when it comes to the autofocusing of this lens, basically it's the same as all Viltrox lenses on Sony systems. The autofocus is quite smooth and nice and fast and catches me pretty much no matter where I go in the frame. And when it comes to focus breathing, don't really see a lot over here, so that's actually good that the focus breathing is well tamed. Now, the very exciting characteristic about this specific lens, as you can see in this specific shot, is that this is a rectilinear lens. It doesn't have the fisheye barrel distortion. So if you think about it, on an APS-C camera, you're basically getting a 20mm with no fisheye distortion. That's pretty good. But on a full frame, you're going with a 1.2 to 1.3 clear zoom, and you're getting essentially a 15.5 to 16mm with a rectilinear design. That is really awesome, especially for people that are on gimbals. Now, when it comes to the focus throw is approximately 270 degrees, which is exactly the same as all the other Viltrox lenses from their full frame to their APS-C. This is really good in terms of filmmakers because that long focus throw makes it easier for you to follow a subject without overshooting them. But if you're going to be running handheld, 270 degrees is rather long, and you're not going to be able to make the full twist if you are doing some extreme rack focuses. In which case, I hope that Viltrox in the future releases a firmware software update that allows us to basically choose, hey, we want 180 degree, we want 90 degree focus throw. So that kind of makes us have more options. But again, for this specific lens, they're targeting vloggers, in which case the autofocus is going to be key, and focus throw probably isn't that big of a deal in that case. Now, for this wide angle lens, you can actually get some very close focusing here. I'm basically about 6 inches away from the lens, which is not bad at all. And because of that, you get some very nice bokeh renditions, as you can see here. All right, let's talk about the bokeh real quick, specifically using the bokeh ball test. So what I was surprised to find was that the bokeh does not have onion ringing like most of the other Viltrox lenses, except for the 85mm f1.8 that's for full frame only. So that's really awesome to hear that this lens doesn't have the onion ring effect. So if you are shooting at a Christmas tree or something like that, the bokeh won't have these extra little circles inside, and they'll look very smooth and clean. And in general, because of this, I think your bokeh is just going to look much smoother overall, even for a wide angle lens. Now, when it comes to the build quality and design of this lens, it's built quite well. It's actually more similar to their full frame lineup than their previous APS-C lineup. So I'm not sure if they're going to do like a refresh in the future, but just so you know, it does look slightly different. You still have the USB-C port in the back for firmware updates, of which Viltrox is really good at keeping that up. And the main feature that I want you guys to know is that the front element is not so bulbous to the point that you can't actually put any lens filters and effect filters on it. So that's actually really good, because basically a vlogging situation like this out in the sun, I need to use my variable ND filter, of which I am, so that I can be addressing any type of exposure situations. So good on Viltrox for making sure that we can put on our own lens filters. I would suggest that you get an 82mm just to make sure that you don't potentially cause any vignetting. But generally speaking, you should probably always buy an 82mm, some sort of filter, and just use step-up rings to get it onto the lens you want. So what's the bottom line here? Is this a lens that I think you should be considering? And I have to say, if you have been looking for a wide-angle lens of any sort, this is actually a pretty good deal if you can snag it before the Indiegogo campaign is over. For $360 some for a very wide, fast f1.4 and sharp wide-angle lens that has autofocus, that basically allows vloggers to do exactly what they need, especially if you are vlogging with a full-frame camera, in which case you're going to be able to get basically almost a 15.5 to 16mm wide-angle lens when you do Sony's digital zoom to about 1.2 to a 1.3 crop. That's definitely awesome. Now, when it comes to also the build quality, I really like the fact that it does not have a bulbous element in the front, which allows you to actually use lens effect filters. So maybe if you're doing some wedding photography and you're flying this on a gimbal and you want to use some mist effects, then you can definitely do that. And at the end of the day, I think this is a really great option for people who are looking for a wide-angle lens. Now, for me specifically and personally, I don't really vlog at all on this channel. So me having this wide-angle lens doesn't really mean anything. And even for my narrative films, it's not something I generally really use. My sweet spot is between 35mm to 50mm full frame equivalent. And at certain points, I might pull out a 24mm, and more often than not, I love the 105mm look. So that's kind of my focal range. Having a 15.5 to 20mm, I might end up starting to use it a little bit more, maybe for very specific types of shots. But for me as a narrative filmmaker, it's not something I necessarily need. So at the end of the day, if you are looking for a wide-angle lens, I would highly recommend that you take a look at the Viltrox 13mm for either your full frame, Sony specifically, or your APS-C systems. And hey, that is it for this week, everybody. If this video has made all the influence in your purchasing decisions, I do have some affiliate links down below that does help support the channel should you decide to use it. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave it down below. I will get to them as fast as I can. And until next time, like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you guys in the next one.